Hi, we're here at Cush Light with Jonathan, checking out some of your products. Now, everybody is very familiar with tape lights. I mean, I've used them for my own home remodeling. They're very versatile, but most of them that are out there aren't the greatest for accuracy, color accuracy, for film work. I see you guys have some tape light products that are designed for the filmmaker in mind. Take us through some of your product line.
Yep, our main focus at Cush Light is we focus on color-corrected strips. Color-corrected meaning that you have daylight and tungsten at about a 95 plus CRI. We color-code our strips so that if it's tungsten, it's copper. If it's daylight, it's white, so that you know without having to actually try and read it. All of our strips use heavy, dense boards, so they're 10 millimeters wide for single color. They've got 2-ounce copper. That allows you to get 5 meters out and not have a drop off in your voltage, because with DC, line loss is always an issue. So we have our daylight or tungsten, and then we have our variable white, which we call cinema white, because in the cinema, white is a variable thing. It might be 3200, it might be 5500, it could be anywhere in between. We took that same mixture and we made a rigid strip, and even though it's rigid, it's still very flexible. And with the DIY, or with the consumer in mind, we thought that when you show up on location, you may not have a soldering iron with you, but you may still need to plug in, do a little light in the doorway or what have you. So these are solderless connection terminals. All you have to do is take your stranded or solid wire, push down on the button and push it in. You can pull on it, it's strong. You want to pull on it, you're welcome to pull on it, pull hard, and it's a good, strong, solid connector. They also are mechanical holes, or mechanical fastener holes in here. So like we built this blanket light back here using 440 screws. So the entire fixture, which is about 400 watts of LED light, is built completely with solderless connections. This exact fixture actually just came off a show. It was running for about 3 months on location. It was out in the rain, it got beat up, hammered, and the day that they were done, he said, "Hey, you want to bring it to your show?" I said, "Sure." And we threw it out, and this is what it looks like. And the connections are still all rock solid, just as they were 4 months ago when they started their project. Basically what we have here, this rig is fed by 2 controllers because it's 30 amps, 400 watts at 12 volts, and then it's set up with our cinema white strips. So you can take your tungsten level and you can dim it down. You can take your daylight level, you can dim it down, so you can go full up. You can blind the heck out of the camera guy, right? Why not? We'll dim it back down so the camera guy is not blind.
And now this system, you could be able to remove these if you wanted to and use them.
You could remove these, yep. The way this one's set up is that they're screwed in from the back. The one that's up there is actually a 12-inch by 40-inch fixture with the back screws exposed. We had covered these because the customer wanted it. It's all about customization. But the idea is they're mechanical fasteners. You can screw them and unscrew them. You can stick in your wires and pull them out. You're not having to deal with adhesives. You're not having to deal with, strips that might be considered expendable because you've put them up, you stuck them to the wall, and when you go to remove them, now they're damaged. So it makes for a lot longer term product.
All right, so you have the rigid, you also have the tape strands. Tell us the difference between those. Okay,
so they're all using the same diodes. They're all using our 95 CRI plus color-corrected diodes. With the flexible strips, you have adhesive backings on it. We use 3M high-heat adhesive backing, so it will hold on, especially as it gets hot. And these come with our DC jacks on there. We make our own DC jacks because not all are created the same, and you need wire that's comparable to actually feed your supply. We color-code these so that you can see, copper for tungsten. And then we have the mixed version, which is a variable white, and this works great if you're going around, in a circle, or if you're coming around a corner, but maybe you want something to build the fixture out of. Maybe you want to stick it into a doorway so that you have a light without having to put any tape up. You could take a thumbtack and push it in. So we made the flexible strip with the idea that you want, or the rigid strip rather, forgive me, with the idea that you may want to build a fixture and you may want to use your product frequently. It's not just a one-time install.
So just this in of itself would be a fixture.
This could be a fixture in itself, correct. That's the idea. You do your solderless connection terminal, you push in your wire, you feed it 12 volts, and it's on. You want to control it, you want to dim it, we provide our film-safe dimmers, with 3-channel mode, 2-channel mode, so that you can set daylight, set tungsten, dim overall, and Yeah.
So now, one thing too with the flexible, you can cut it every so often, right?
And it's the same. The rigid's exactly the same.
You can trim, okay.
You can trim the rigid. So the idea is, if it's a single color, every 3 diodes you can cut. If it's a variable white, because there are 2 sets of resistors, the way this works is that each diode is 3.3 volts. So if I have a diode cut section, like a single color, I've got 3 times 3.3 volts plus the resistor. The resistor eats up the balance of the 12 volts that I'm feeding the circuit. In a cinema white version, you have 6 diodes per cut section, and you have that because you actually have 2 resistors in line. You have a resistor for the daylight, and you have a resistor for the tungsten. So whether it's flexible or rigid, every 6 diodes you can cut. On our rigid strips, the first 6 diodes will feed you a mechanical fastener hole, and the next 6 diodes will feed you a new contact. Now you can still cut every 6 diodes, but you can feed your contacts in every 12.
Okay. So if somebody's wanting to build their own system, what would the components be necessary? I mean, with the DC jack, you could theoretically just plug it
right into a power supply.
But if you want to be able to dim it, if you have the cinema white and have the variable color, you want to be able to dial between that. How does that work?
So all of our strips are powered by 12 volts, and they're done so in a common anode way, which means that they share the positive and they dim on the negative side. The way you dim an LED to make it protected for film is you have to do so via pulse width modulation. What that means is that you're turning on and off the diode so many times a second so that the camera doesn't see it. Your eye will start to see a pulse width modulation right around 500 megahertz. If you want to get into a situation where you start to get camera safe, you're in that 5,000 megahertz range. That's where you're at 30 frames per second, 180 degree shutter angle. However, that could be an audible issue because at 5,000 hertz you still have audible frequency. So if you start to use a cheaper power supply, components start to vibrate, you hear that. When you get into our cinematic dimming technology, you get into a pulse width modulation frequency and formula that is camera safe. You can start to adjust your camera angle, shutter angle. You can start to adjust your frame rate, and you're safe. You can dim it all the way down to 1. You can, go from 1 to 100. You can go from 1 to 255, and you can step all the way through and be rock solid. With our dimmers, there's a display in there. So with the display, you always know what value you're at. You're not stuck with a potentiometer where you're trying to hit a Sharpie mark or hit a tape mark. You're not worrying about potentiometer contacts wearing out. You've got smart encoders that allow you to quickly adjust from 0 to 100 or step through 1 step at a time and go from, and hit your marks consistently, accurately every time. Our controllers actually have a fade timer built in. So that smart encoder recognizes that if I'm going 1 click at a time, it's stepping slowly, or if I grab it and ramp it fast, it goes, hey, it's time to dim. So it'll go all the way to 0 or all the way to 100 in 1 270 degree move. Because there's a fade timer built in, that allows you the option of saying, I want to make a 5-second fade. So I'm on set and I want to make sure that the light switch, or whatever it is, turns off 5 seconds every time. Every time I rotate that quickly from 0 to 100, it's the exact same fade time. There's no questions, there's no guessing. I can see it on a display and I know that I've got it locked in.
It's built right into the controller.
And it's built into that controller.
You don't have to have a DMX controller to do that.
No, you don't have to have a DMX controller. But the nice thing is that instead of having, a device that does DMX or a device that does local control or a device that does one effect, we've got a device that does local control, that does it in a 3-channel mode, that does it in a 2-channel mode with a master control so you can set Kelvin temperature and dim. It also has an effects generator built in so you can have your lightning effect, you can have your dimmer curves, you can create custom effects, and then you could control it, with DMX. You can control it remotely with our wireless setup.
And so you're showcasing using your iPad with that. Is that something that's built into your controller system, or is that third-party software that's being...
So the dimmers operate on a DMX 512A protocol, which means that we can control it with a wireless DMX controller, right, that's feeding DMX protocol, or we can translate into what's called ArtNet. So if you wanted to go to an iOS device or an Android device or what have you, you basically have a Wi-Fi router, and then that Wi-Fi router has to transmit via ArtNet, because that's the language that transmits over a Wi-Fi system. So then you have what's basically like a sandbox or something that translates from ArtNet into DMX. So you have your controller, you plug in your sandbox, it's now taking DMX, translating into ArtNet, it goes into your router then transmits out to your iPad. You grab your iPad, you open up your software, you want to dim it, you can dim right down. So
Cool.
it's that easy.
Now you mentioned the ability to work at standard frame rates. What about high speed?
You can do high speed. When you get into our high frequency or cinematic dimming technology, you can do high speed. That's the idea.
Okay.
You're in a frequency, you're in a pulse width modulation frequency that is camera safe. Obviously, you always have to do your own camera tests, but we've done our own, and we've done a lot of them, and we're pretty confident with our product.
Okay, very good. So you have product lines that are aimed for kind of any scale of production, from the DIY all the way up to the major production. So if somebody wanted to get started with this, what would be the basic components that they would need? So they get your tape light. You can plug that directly into the wall. If they wanted to get their own, off-the-shelf tape light dimmer, that would work with it.
Our strips are all 12 volts. So if you have a 12 volt source, whether that's a battery or a power supply, you can plug it into the strip directly. Connect your ground, connect your positive properly. You don't want to reverse your polarity, and that will turn it on. And then when you want to dim, you could use a different dimmer. If it's just for your house, you can use an economic pulse width modulation dimmer, to cycle that ground on and off. If you need it on camera, that's when you get into our cinematic dimming technology.
If you want to hook up multiple strands together to do something like this, where do you start having to have multiple dimmers?
Well, our controllers are rated for they're rated for 15 amps on the in. We have a current fold back at 16 amps to protect you, so that you don't blow the main fuse. There's a 20 amp main fuse because everybody needs like 3 or 4 levels of protection, right? Then each channel outputs up to 8 amps, and that has a slow blow fuse at 8 amps. So you can run about 3 5-meter spools of single color or variable white, cinema white on one controller. If you get into RGB, you can run up to 4 5-meter spans on one controller. This particular fixture, because it's 30 amps, has 2 controllers.
All right, so lots of great products here. Tell us a little bit about price point for somebody just entering into these cinema tape lights.
Sure. I actually started this business because I was developing fixtures and because there wasn't a good enough product out there. So I made the color-corrected strips, and that was my first priority, was really good product. My next priority was price point, because I didn't want to spend a lot of money for garbage. So I made the best product, and then I did so in a way that I could keep costs low. So our starting price, our list price for all of our flexible strips is $240 for a 5-meter spool. Our rigid strips are $50 for a 1-meter spool, and these are list prices. Obviously, there's always specials running. Our controllers, we list at $450. That controller, though, as you heard, is a very powerful machine. When it comes to power supplies, it's about $10 an amp. $10 an amp gets you there, and we also have batteries. Our batteries are somewhere in the world of about, I don't know, I haven't looked at them.
But if, so somebody's just wanting to get started in this, I'm assuming they can come to you and they say, this is kind of what I'm envisioning that I want to build. What do I need? So you guys can help build that for them.
we have a great user interface. We're happy to work with customers. If you come to us and you have a design, something you've drawn out, we'll help you get it there. You're like, I want it to be this big, I want it to be this bright. What do I need to control it? What do I need to turn it on? How many strips do I need? And if you can't build it yourself, we'll build it for you.
Awesome. So where can people go for more information?
You can check us out at Cush Light, CushLight.com. And there's all sorts of information on that site. There's an e-store link. If you click on the e-store link, it has all of our prices listed there, as well as more information for each product.
Cool. Thanks for your time, Jonathan.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it.
Thanks to our sponsors for making our Cine Gear coverage possible.